Okay, so we're going to get started. I'm going to have to yell, so I apologize if you're really close to me and I'm screaming in your face. So my name is Kara Lynham, and I'm an immigration attorney here in the Twin Cities. Thank you so much for being here tonight, especially just came together in like 36 hours. So to have this many people here so quickly is really amazing to me. So I'm joined with two other fellow immigration attorneys from here in the Twin Cities, and we will try to yell. We are live streaming this, so I guess if you can't hear me right now, it'll be available to you later via video. So I'll let these two introduce themselves. So I'll say a little bit about myself. So my background is that I'm a family-based immigration attorney, and I've made 4 trips down to the border to represent families who have been detained by immigration. So I've spent a fair amount of time on this, and of course now we're in this new frontier of family separation. We want to talk more about that. So
hi everyone, so I'm one of the other presenters. My name is Anna Patratz Acosta, and I am a professor at Mitchell Hamlin, and I'm an immigration attorney as well. And a lot of my academic work right now is centered on stuff going on at the border, so I'm really glad that you're all here to learn more about what's happening right now. Thanks.
And good afternoon, my name is Brian Ost. I'm a private practitioner. I've been in practice since 2000. I own a small firm here in Minneapolis, but also volunteer for other nonprofit agencies here in the Twin Cities. I've been down to the border myself once, and currently have a pro bono client from El Salvador who fled here to the United States as a result of the ongoing troubles down in Guatemala, El Salvador, and Honduras. Thanks, Kara, for organizing this event.
So just like the only housekeeping thing really is that you're welcome to ask questions. We just ask that you hold them to the end so that we can sort of answer them all at one time. We're all willing to stay after to answer questions privately too. So Anna, if you want to start us off with why we're here.
Sure. So kind of to kick off the event before we get into the nitty-gritty of what's happening at the border, I did want to share a message that I received yesterday from Taylor Levy. She was a student of mine at Mitchell Hamlin. She just graduated, and she's an accredited representative for an organization called Annunciation House in El Paso, Texas. And she shared with me that having us have this event is truly magic, and we frequently feel like we're drowning down here with no support. So my eyes teared up when I heard that you're having this event, so thank you. So we just want to thank you all for being here and supporting this cause and just raising awareness, because the people at the border feel alone, and the fact that we're here supporting them means a lot. So yeah, so I'm going to turn it over to Kara to kind of get us started on the nitty-gritty of why we're here.
So, one of the major things we're seeing now are these missing kids, right? There's 1,475 children that are unaccounted for right now who had arrived at the border, were processed by CBP, Customs and Border Patrol, and then later Health and Human Services, which runs the unaccompanied minor program, and they've lost track of these kids. This came out about a month ago, and now it's fortunately becoming much more publicly known. So the way it works when an unaccompanied minor, so a child that's without a parent, shows up at the border, they are usually immediately encountered by Customs and Border Patrol, and then they are taken into custody, where they're then kept in custody, usually about 45 days, while the government tries to find somewhere to put these kids. The New York Times says that HHS, so the government agency that actually oversees the housing of these children, so it's not ICE, it's HHS, they did a kind of an audit of the 7,600 kids that they were supposed to be in charge of, and that's where this 1,400 number came from. That's what's unaccounted for. The major concern, of course, is that these kids, who knows who they're with, if they're with a safe person, if they're in a safe place, if they've been trafficked. There have been 8 children already back in 2015 who were trafficked onto an egg farm in Ohio after they were released from CBP custody. So we know this has happened before, and it's something to be concerned about. HHS is supposed to check on these kids 30 days after they're released. That's what they're supposed to do. And I'm a good dog person, so that's fine. And there's not a big oversight function going on here. So that's a big concern. We're going to talk more about what's proposed, where that's going to go, but those are the facts as they are today. So I know we talk a lot about ICE and various government agencies, but with these missing children, it's CBP, Customs and Border Patrol, and Health and Human Services actually are the two agencies that are most responsible for losing these children. And then Brian, if you want to talk about family detention.
So, family detention is a recent phenomenon. But don't be fooled, detention as a function of people arriving at our border has been a feature of our immigration system for many, many years, many decades. But it's come into the public conscience as a result of what we saw was a minor flood. It wasn't the catastrophic wave that has been made out, but it was a noticeable increase and uptick in people arriving from three principal countries: Guatemala, El Salvador, and Honduras. And primarily women and minor children, but not exclusively. And what we saw was a panicked response in 2014 from the administration saying, well, what are we going to do? Well, we think we should deter these people from showing up at our border, so we're going to detain them. Well, family groups that arrived, if they arrived as a unified family group, meaning a mother, father, and children, they were frequently separated. So fathers would be shipped off to one place, maybe along with older male children over the age of 14, and then mothers and children were separately held, primarily in two detention facilities. And these are contract detention facilities operated by private corrections companies that have large contracts with the Department of Homeland Security. And so they are detained to present their case. A lot of these women and children and men also are presenting horrific stories of recruitment, of violent extortion, sexual assault, things that would stand your hair on end. And I've heard these stories from women and children in Dilley, which is one of the facilities where people are held in Dilley, Texas. So there's two primary facilities, two in Texas and then one in Berks County, Pennsylvania. And so the purpose of their being held is that they have arrived at the border without a lawful immigration document. So it's the government's job to sort out whether they may have, in light of the fact that they don't have the proper documents to enter, whether they should be allowed to stay in the U.S. nonetheless to pursue a rightful claim to asylum. So this process can take many weeks, if not months, just if they're detained. And what we're seeing is an overburdening of the immigration court system as a consequence. And so the government right now is scrambling, trying to figure out where to place their resources. But what they're doing further as a result of this, in this process, is they're now seeking to separate children from their mothers as a deterrent mechanism. I'm not sure exactly how this deters people who may not have access to the mediums, the social media accounts that you and I do, but they're fleeing for their lives. And so the idea is that they should be given the opportunity to present these claims before the proper authorities, and they have that right as guaranteed by both U.S. and international law. So, on.
All right. Okay, so kind of the main event. So what's happening right now? As far as the missing kids that Kara mentioned, so the Department of Health and Human Services, HHS, the government entity that's responsible for overseeing the unaccompanied minor program, what they've said is that they're looking into things and trying to find the 1,500 or so children who have been missing. But really, it's unclear what exactly is happening or what is being done to find the kids. So this is an ongoing story, and we'll probably know more in the weeks and months ahead. As far as separating parents and kids at the border, sort of to walk you through exactly what is happening and what the official policy now is as far as separating moms and kids. Kind of what's happened is that moms and kids or parents and kids have been separated kind of on an ad hoc basis. So even though we're hearing a lot about it over this past week, this is something that really has been happening over the past year or so. What the government has been doing is they've been prosecuting the parent for unlawful entry. It's a misdemeanor crime to enter the United States without a proper visa. So the the parents are being prosecuted, and then the children are being placed in the custody of Health and Human Services. We were hearing about that sort of on an ad hoc basis, but it wasn't the official policy of the government to do that. And there's been a lot of reporting by the Houston Chronicle and the New York Times and the Washington Post about this, and we'll tweet out links to those articles later. Kind of what the big change has been over the past month and over the past week is when we really saw them implementing this into full effect is that it's the official policy where they're having a zero tolerance policy for anyone apprehended within the United States who doesn't have permission along the southern border. They're going to prosecute the parents for unlawful entry or for even for smuggling in their own child when they're bringing their child to the United States to apply for asylum and seek safety. And what will happen is the parent will go off to be prosecuted by the Department of Justice and eventually, and in some cases, deported by the Department of Homeland Security. Sometimes they may not have the chance to file their asylum claim before they're removed from the country. And then as far as the kids are concerned, they're transferred to the custody of Health and Human Services. And as you can imagine, this is creating a lot more unaccompanied minors than are normally accepted by Health and Human Services, so they don't have the capacity to take care of all of these kids. So what they're planning to do with the overload or all of the overflow of unaccompanied minors that are being created by this new policy of separating parents and kids is that they're actually going to start housing children on military bases while they try to find a sponsor that can take custody of them in the United States. And if they can't find a sponsor, then the kids are going to be in the custody of Health and Human Services, and we don't know what kind of conditions they'll be in. So it's very, very troubling, to say the least. And then I think Kara wanted to mention the issue of turnbacks as well.
Yeah, so, and there's no law requiring them to separate these families. I know that our president has tweeted, as I think this morning, even about that there's this law that they can work on. There is no law. This is a policy change. They have purposely chosen to take this action to do this. And part of when these families present themselves at the border, they are asking for asylum. They're asylum seekers. It's almost like refugee status. And what we're seeing and hearing more of are people coming to our border asking for protection and being told, no, we're not taking you today. We're going to turn you away. We're not going to let you in. Any number of what we know are lies. Like the U.S. doesn't have asylum anymore. Or we don't give asylum to people from Honduras or anything. There's a whole lawsuit about it. But so on top of these families being separated, they have to go through this really, I don't even know how to put it, I mean, horrific day at the border where they're just hoping that someone will let them in when they've spent this whole time traveling to get here for protection. So they have to get past that hurdle even too. So was there anything else about any of that?
Yeah, I think that is, yeah. And these are things that are nothing new. So turning people away from the border, kind of ad hoc prosecuting people as a backdoor way to separate moms and kids. These are things that have been happening for a while, but now we're sort of seeing it on steroids, and it's a real problem. So we're glad that you're all here to listen.
So my whole big thing is like busting myths with immigration because there's so much misinformation out there. So we want to spend a little bit of time on what are some really common ones. Our president is obsessed with MS-13, and that's a gang in all Central America, and it's horrible, right? Like we are all against MS-13. It's a gang. It's horrible. They're committing human rights atrocities in Central America. Those are not these people that are being separated. These people many of them are fleeing the violence of MS-13. So to lump them, like their gang members, together and creating this dissonance about who's who, and talking about them being animals, it doesn't make any sense. It's really dehumanizing. So when he talks about MS-13, MS-13 members are not eligible for asylum. That's not even, they're barred by law from asylum. So to talk about that like they would be coming into or flooding in and taking over. That's just not the case. There are a couple other myths I want to talk about too.
Sure. So another thing that our president is obsessed with is this whole concept of catch and release. So when he's talking about catch and release, what he's referring to is that when people appear at the border and say that they're afraid to go back to their home country and pass what's called a credible fear interview and are going to be pursuing an asylum claim, what usually would happen is that they're allowed to be released from jail or released from detention while their case is pending in immigration court. That's all catch and release is. It's the ability to not be in jail when you're applying for protection in the United States. And another thing too, in addition to the turnbacks and separating moms and kids, one of the things that's changed since President Trump has taken office is that there's been a significant decrease in the people who are released on parole or on bond after they pass their credible fear interview at the border. So we're also, this is not getting as much attention, but we're also seeing many people being held for months and months while they're waiting for their asylum claim to be heard. So this is another emerging issue in immigration law and another thing that's happening at the border that's important for all of you to know.
Another one of the myths is, well, why don't they just apply for asylum in Mexico? They've made this long journey. They're endangering their children and themselves by making this horrendous journey through this big country of Mexico. They're there. Why don't they just apply for asylum there? Well, first of all, the government of Mexico has a very weak, not a terribly robust system for receiving and accepting asylum applicants. Secondly, the country of Mexico itself, if you read the most recent country conditions report or travel advisory, has in certain parts of the country conditions that are as bad or worse than Syria, a country in the midst of a civil war. So what does that tell you about the relative safety that somebody might experience in a place like Mexico as they're traveling through it or seeking refuge in that place? It's not a terribly safe place. The other myth that gets me to no end is the lawyers are just whispering words in their ear and they're telling them the thing that they need to say that's going to propel their case through the system and get them asylum. Two people here and the number of other attorneys that I see in this room and all of the attorneys that I've encountered take their job and their ethical promise to uphold the law seriously. We would never tell somebody to falsify a story for the simple act of gaining an immigration benefit. So I take it as a personal insult when he is broadly lobbying a complaint, I guess, against the entire immigration legal practice that we are simply feeding people lies to tell the government. That is just simply an abhorrent thing for him and anybody in his administration to say.
So now that we've got through all that, what can you do, right? Like, so we have a couple ideas of things you can do. We're going to go through them kind of orally as we can. So you go.
Sure. So, as with many cases, when there's something horrible that is going on around the world, the best thing that you can do oftentimes is donate your money if you have any available. And locally here in the Twin Cities, there are two organizations that we'd recommend you donate to, the Immigrant Law Center and the Advocates for Human Rights. The Immigrant Law Center actually added capacity and they're now representing individuals who are in deportation proceedings. So, and they're a great organization, so if you can support their work, that's wonderful. Additionally, the Advocates for Human Rights represents asylum seekers from all over the world, including individuals from the Northern Triangle of Honduras, El Salvador, and Guatemala. And they're a great organization that provides wonderful services to thousands of asylum seekers every year. And then lastly, I also want to give a special shout out to Annunciation House. Annunciation House is the organization that I mentioned earlier that a former student of mine Taylor Levy works for. It's located in El Paso, Texas, and they're doing really important work along the border to assist individuals who are appearing at the border and presenting themselves to apply for asylum. So, and we'll also continue to tweet out information about other organizations that could use your help in these trying times.
And I'll say, I just want to add before you go that Annunciation House is amazing, and they have an Amazon wish list, and they need like paper and toner and pens and stuff that you and I could all just go buy tomorrow, but they don't have any money. So I'll send out that information. If you have $25 for paper, it would go a really long way at the border because they're receiving these people as they're being released.
So in terms of things that you can do on the volunteer scale, in terms of donating your money to ILCM and advocates, they also have the capacity to have you offer your skills, whether they be driving people to court, interpreting if you may know Spanish or other languages. In fact, I've seen people from Brazil, we've seen people from Democratic Republic of Congo, so we've got Portuguese, French. I mean, there's various linguistic skills that are needed in terms of assisting people, because hopefully once they're released, they will go to their family, and they may end up here in Minnesota. There are a number of organizations down on the border that may need interpreting services either by phone or written documents that may need to be translated, because when somebody presents documents to the immigration court to say, this is my story, they're frequently in Spanish or some other language. Maybe you have that linguistic skill to do a translation or interpretation for those people that are detained. Likewise, you may feel that call to actually find an organization and go down to the border and work with folks. If you have the time and capacity to give up a week and go down and do that, I know there are a number of organizations down on the border that would probably be willing, even as a non-lawyer, to find a place or a niche for you to work yourself into.
So the administration will get away with this if we don't hold them accountable, right? So we need to call our Congress members. They need to be held accountable. There need to be hearings. There need to be reports. These people need to come in front of Congress and testify about this. The only way the members of Congress are going to know that any of us care, that any of us were ever here tonight, is if you call them. Call them on Tuesday. Call them on Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. Leave a message on the weekend. I don't care. What they're going to do is they're going to tally your calls. You don't have to give them like a 10-minute explanation of why you think this is wrong, although you could. You know, you could just say, I'm against family separation. I want you to hold hearings. Here's my name and phone number. Have a good day. Call back the next day and say the same thing. So how we all got worked up about healthcare and about taxes and all of that, like that is how we need to be this summer. Because in August, they're all going to be having their town halls. They're all going to be here. And this matters even for our, what we consider more friendly members of Congress too, right? Like they need to know that we care. So I do it all the time. I call these members of Congress all the time. And you know, maybe I'm just one call that day. Maybe I'm the 10th call that day. I don't know. But they keep track of that. So even if everyone here called, we could start something, right? And everyone watching wherever you are in the world. The other thing I wanted to put, and the other thing too is like, well, I guess that's fine. Just call your member of Congress. I swear to God, it'll help. Please do it. And stay tuned, right? This all just started. Once the massive family separation starts, there will be infrastructure for us to help. Right now, they're trying to figure that out down there. You know, everyone here probably has a social media account because you're here. So pay attention to it. There will be information about that as it moves forward. I don't know when that will be. I think it's going to be sooner than we like. But we all went to the airport. You know, we all fought that. We all went other places with DACA and all that stuff happened. So we'll just have to do it again, and we can do that. So I guess that's all we had for a program. We're happy to take questions. June 14th day. Oh yes, there's a hashtag where are our children march. Yeah, the March for so that is June 14th. We're actually all at an immigration law conference that day.
San Francisco.
We'll all be in San Francisco for a conference, so that will probably be a pretty robust march. Yeah, so I don't have more information about that. If anyone else is an organizer that's here, of course pay attention to social media, but go to that too, because seeing people in the streets, Congress pays attention to that. Oh, sorry, I'll go to, there's two right behind you, so yeah, you can go first. Oh, so you can follow me. I'm at Kara Lynam, K-A-R-A-L-Y, N as in Nancy, U, M as in Mark, on Twitter. And you are A. Patratz Acosta.
Yeah.
I'll let you spell that.
Yeah, so it's A-P-O-T-T-R-A-T-Z-A-C-O-S-T-A.
And then Brian is a good one too.
Aust lawyer, A-U-S-T lawyer.
And I also, if you look at mine, you'll find their handles as well. So the question's about Hennepin County Jail and any family separations happening here in Minneapolis. So Hennepin County Jail does cooperate with ICE. The city itself has a separation ordinance, but the county does not. The county is funding legal services for, they have a funding pot for legal services for immigrants detained. I haven't heard of any family separations happening here other than as part of enforcement actions here in the interior, where maybe someone is picked up by ICE and then there was a child at school or something. But we haven't had any, what you think of as at the border of a family separation where they're forcibly separated. It'd be more of the horrific situation of no one picking the child up at school, which we do a lot of presentations on that, so that everyone has a plan. So that if you are picked up by immigration while you're at work and your child is at school, there's someone to go get your child at least. It's a good question. Yep, yeah, sorry, yeah. Yeah? Yeah. Yeah. That is an excellent question. So, and we can also send out scripts for what you can say when you call, but you can ask them for oversight.
Can we restate the question?
Yeah, sorry. So the question is basically, you're calling about everything, things are really hard, and your member of Congress is saying, well, what do you want me to do? Maybe I'm in the minority. What do you expect me to do, or what do you want me to do? And the answer is, hold a hearing, write a letter, ask for oversight of these programs, and they can do that. Well, depending on the committees they're on, but yeah.
I was also going to add the power of the purse. So at the end of the day, every member of Congress has to vote on an omnibus bill and spending bills, and they're funding this right now, and they don't have to. So you can say, don't give funding that's appropriated to separating moms and kids at the border.
Specifically on this action, right now, with all the problems with children being separated, and I heard someone say today, there's a conservative Republican saying, this could change like that. Trump, the Congress would say, change the policy. Is this true? What would it take to change the policy of separating children?
I'll repeat your question. So the question is basically, so could they change it tomorrow? What could they do to change this? Well, they change to doing it, they can change out of doing it just like that. They can be hopefully, possibly shamed out of doing it before they even start this on a massive scale. But they could also, I suppose, pass a law not allowing this. But then I don't know how that would work because you'd have to sign it. It would take quite a few members of Congress to do that. But yeah, there's not. I mean, it's our message has always been oversight at this point because ask them for oversight. Yeah, unfortunately, because if they're in the minority, that may be all they can do. Yeah. Good question.
I saw that Tina Smith tweeted about separating children, and I wanted to hear your thoughts about that. If you were willing to do better things for separating children.
Yeah, so yeah, that's a good question. So Tina Smith has with her new bill called the HELP Act, which she introduced last week. That's more related to interior enforcement. So when kids are, it's like we talked about, if you're picked up, you're a part of a raid, and your child is left behind at school, things you can do. Like the parent will be allowed to call the school. If the parent's being deported, they'll be allowed to hug their child before they're deported. Yeah, that has to be legislated. Things like that. And there's some language in there about being able to help children who are in the process of being deported, allowing parents to help. I mean, if you have undocumented parents, I'd be nervous about that, but that's more of an interior issue rather than a border issue. But I do know that she is aware of this issue. And again, this is all kind of new still. I would anticipate, if it was on Meet the Press, I mean, I anticipate we'll be seeing hopefully some legislation on it. Hopefully it goes far. Okay. Yeah. So after this, they're talking about maybe planning an action to go visit a member of Congress. So if you'd like to do that, you can speak with her. I'm sorry, what's your name? Joanna. Let's speak with Joanna. Is there a question over here? No.
Are there any questions for me?
Yeah. Yes. Kara, K-A-R-A, and then just my last name, L-Y, N as in Nancy, U, and then M as in Mark. You're welcome. That's a good, easy question. I like it. Yeah, so make sure you vote this fall. Sorry. Yeah, so I'm going to answer another question. You guys can answer.
The short answer would be Sheriff Stanek is kind of the worst offender in my opinion. But what do you think?
Yeah, he's right.
Yeah.
I would agree with that assessment as well. It's been very clear. In fact, if you'll recall, last March, it was that he was put on the naughty list by the Department of Homeland Security for not cooperating with ICE. And he went out of his way to put video out there in a press release saying, I did cooperate in these cases, and here's the video proof of it. So he's very proud of his willingness to cooperate and didn't appreciate being called out by Department of Homeland Security on that issue.
And he spent 40 deputies just standing on it.
Right.
Just to say, if you do want to vote out Rich Stanek, Dave Hutchinson is a viable candidate. So there's a candidate.
So if you have questions about that, talk to Carl. Are there any other questions? We're also happy to hang out here too if you want to ask us
Were
privately.
there any questions online?
Cool.
All right.
Any questions? Okay. Yeah. Yep. Because then you've given them the information of where you were born, and that's all ICE needs really. So the thing was that Hennepin County at intake has a box on country of origin, and that box is optional. The box doesn't even have to be there. We can take that box off the form entirely. So, thank you so much for being here. We really appreciate it. This came together really fast. So to make the time on a weekend, it's so hot out. I would never leave the house really if I didn't have to. But we really do appreciate you all being here. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Stop it.